Hello, lovelies. Welcome to another episode of Daily Kupo. I hope that you guys enjoyed the last episode, and I'm welcoming you back to some time with me to talk about whatever it is that I feel like is on my mind. I spent most of the day in bed today. I wasn't feeling that great. I woke up this morning and got my son off to school, and I ended up going back to bed. I'm thankful that I have that luxury, but at the same time, it's not something that I'm happy about. I'm someone that's disabled, so I don't really do much else. That said, it was nice to be able to go back to bed. So yesterday, I spent some time with my computer because I really wanted to play Valorant, as I had said in my last episode. And the first thing that I was met with when I sat down at my computer is that my Windows was no longer activated. That's always a bummer. I hate it when I end up with those messages. And it's not the first time I've had this problem. It's definitely something that comes up occasionally. I'd probably say once every 6 months to a year or so. I have Windows 10. It used to happen to me on Windows 7 as well. So I recently had an update go through on my computer, and I'm assuming that that's what caused this problem. So I went to look at my computer, and a little bit of backstory before we get into this. I got my copy of Windows, as well as the key for Windows, from DeVry University when I was in school, when I was going through to get my bachelor's degree. And I've never had a problem with it. It's an educational edition of the software. It's always been straightforward, and whenever I have problems, I just hit the activate button and it reactivates Windows, no problem. So I go to the activation window and I go to troubleshoot the problem to see if maybe the troubleshooter will just solve it for me. And the first thing that I notice is it says that I have Windows Pro, which isn't right. And I fear that we are going to have a problem. And the troubleshooter comes up and it tells me that I have a copy of Windows Home with a Windows Pro key, or Windows Pro with a Windows Home key, which makes absolutely no sense in any context. So, of course, the first thing I do is I get on the phone with Microsoft and I say, this is the situation. And it's someone who obviously is not very well versed with computers, from a call center that probably just answers phones and reads a script. So I'm talking to this guy and he tells me to run the troubleshooter, which of course I've already done. And I tell him what it says, and then he has me run something through command prompt to try and activate it over the phone, which I do, and of course that doesn't work. And he then tries to proceed to tell me that my Windows cannot be activated unless I contact the administrator for my school, which of course is not possible. So I ask him if there is anything that he can do, because this doesn't make any sense. And so after chattering for a while, he puts me on hold, goes away, and asks me to go get the key. And he actually asked me what the key is, and I tell him that I don't have it in front of me. And then his next question to me is, how do I know that the key is for Windows Home if I don't have it in front of me? To which I re-explained to him that the troubleshooter told me that. So then I go through and I rummage through my files on my computer. Thankfully, they're decently organized. And I find the key. And he tells me that it's most likely not going to work. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, what's interesting about this is an educational edition key. So none of this makes any sense. So he asked me to go ahead and type the key in the activation box and see what happens. And of course I do. And what happens? It activates Windows, no problem. And then it changes everything and says that I have the educational edition of Windows. So, someone please explain to me how that makes any sense whatsoever. Because truthfully, I don't understand. So, the result of that was a massive waste of time on a phone call to Microsoft for literally nothing. Because at one point on that phone call, he put me on mute and he wasn't even paying attention to me, and I had to spend 5 minutes basically yelling at him, and I wouldn't say yelling, poking at him, asking if he was even still there, because he was talking to somebody else in the call center. So that was a massive waste of time, and now my Windows is active. And then I go to play Valorant. Get in there, get through the tutorial, and I'm digging the game. It's a lot of fun. It seems like it's going to be a really fun game. I don't know. I didn't actually get to try it. Because when I finally got in there and loaded through and went to get into a match, it crashed. So after it crashed, I went through and tried to get some things muddled around on my computer. I haven't used it in a little while for much more than clerical work. Not much for gaming. So I ran some check disks on it and some other things to try and get it up to snuff and hopefully get it working a little bit better. And it still would not run. It was getting stuck on the loading screen. So my other half came and he messed around on my computer a little bit and he was able to get it loaded no problem. So I haven't gotten to try it yet, but I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super excited to give it a try. Hopefully, this time, I'll actually be able to come back and report back with some results. That aside, I haven't been doing too much else. I got a chance to mess around with some of the settings on my podcast, and hopefully it's all streaming well. And also, hopefully, you're able to find this podcast multiple places now, including Spotify, Podcast Addict, and multiple other platforms. I've even submitted it to Apple. So yeah, hopefully it's a little bit more accessible to the people who want to listen. That's the idea anyway. I appreciate everyone so far that has been willing to give the podcast a listen and who has been willing to come and sit with me and listen to whatever it is that I have on my mind for the given day. There's the biggest thing that's been on my mind lately, or for the past few days, is that we have elections coming up in November, and I've been trying to make sure that my voter registration is in fact in the system. Everybody check. I know. We're all registered, or at least a lot of people are, but check anyway. Because sometimes things go wrong, and sometimes you get pulled from the rolls. So, if you want to vote, especially if you have elections that are coming up in November in your state, I happen to live in Iowa, and there are some pretty important elections that are going to be coming up in November that I want to participate in, including the gubernatorial election. Make sure that your voter registration is up to date and on the rolls. It's really important. I try not to get too political in everything, but I'm probably going to talk about some politics as I go along in this podcast, because it's going to be on my mind from day to day. And there are some things that are pretty important to me right now when it comes to politics. And personally, I don't like our governor. I'm not a big fan, and I would like to see her not be our governor anymore. And as such, I wanted to make sure that my registration was up to date and ready to go. And there is a deadline for things like that, so you need to make sure that you're getting it done. At most states, it's either already passed or it's coming up soon, so keep that in mind. That said, that's most of what's been on my mind for today, and I think this is where I'm going to end it off. Thank you very much, lovelies. I really appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.